is I'm a writer, is what I do. I write. And I started examining the subject matter that I write about. And it really only boils down to a few songs based around, I guess, loneliness to a certain extent, coupled with isolation, some kind of spiritual search, and looking for a way into communicating with other people. And that's about it. That's about all I've ever written about in 40 years, you know. It's not really changed.
We'll creep together, you and I. Way back in the Loft Hotel, I'll wheel out the window. You die for diamonds, but you won't live for love.
If it's wearing a pink hat and a red nose and it plays a guitar upside down, I'll go and look at it. You know, and I love to see people being dangerous. There was a real feeling of inadequacy in that area. I never really felt like a rock singer or rock star or whatever. And I always felt a little bit out of my element, which is a ridiculously highfalutin way of looking at it now from my standpoint when I look back and realise that from 72 through till about 76, I was the ultimate rock star. I couldn't have been more rock star.
Records and
but the lifestyle and everything. I mean, it's sort of, you know, anything that was going out there that had anything to do with it being a rock and roll singer, then I'd say, hey, let's go for this, see what it's like.
I read a quote, somebody called you a surreal cartoon character brought to life.
It was sort of, yeah. Ziggy was. I mean, he was half out of sci-fi rock and half out of the Japanese theatre. The clothes were, that time, simply outrageous and simply, nobody had seen anything like them before.
Was there a point where people didn't take your music seriously because you were...
I think I moved out of Ziggy fast enough so as not to be caught by that one. Because most rock characters that one can create only have a short lifespan. They are one-shots, they are cartoony. And the Ziggy thing was worth about 1 or 2 albums before I couldn't really write anything else around him or the world that I sort of wanted to put together for him.
Ziggy played guitar.
I'm a moderately good singer. I'm not a great singer, but I can interpret a song, which I don't think is quite the same as singing it. So I was never unaware of my strength as an interpretive performer, but writing a song for me always, it never rang true. I had no problem writing something for Iggy Pop, or working with Lou Reed, or writing for Mott the Hoople. I can get into their mood and what they want to do, but I find it extremely hard to write for me. So I found it quite easy to write for the artist that I would create, because I did find it much easier, having created the Ziggy, to then write for him. You see, even though it's me doing it, I was able to sort of distance myself from the whole. Yeah, well, it can become very complicated.
There is a psychological
yes, yeah, fucking with the fabric of time. There, it did bring a whole sack full of its own inherent problems, but it.
You have an affection for some of these characters that you've created as you...
I think the only time I get sort of, kind of nostalgic about any of that stuff at all is if I see the odd video or something, or I see a bit of the Ziggy Stardust concerts or whatever. No, other than that, I don't think I'm cold about them, but I think it's work done.
I think that's an actor's attitude too.
I think you have to, otherwise you start... Yeah, you get into a danger of getting into the rut and maybe try to perpetuate something that's gone before. A lot of people that I know are bugged with the idea that they've got to have an audience, they've got to be liked. And I think the more that you fall into that trap, it makes your own life harder to come to terms with, because an audience appreciation is only going to be periodic at the best of times. You'll fall in and out of favour continually. I don't think it should be something one should be looking for. I think you should turn around at the end of the day and say, I really like that piece of work, or that piece of work sucked. Not, was that popular or wasn't it popular?
People stare at the makeup on his face. Laughter is long.
Is it hard being David Bowie?
Not really, not now. No, I don't have the outsider's problem. I mean, for me, and the world that I inhabit in reality is probably a very different world from the one that people would expect that I would be in. It's quite sedate. It's far removed from a lot of what they would feel would be the limousine trappings of a rock existence or whatever. I went to one of the first art-oriented high schools in England, and I had a very excellent teacher, Peter Frampton's father, who really kind of was quite an inspiration. I went into the visual side of an advertising agency, and I was doing paste-up jobs and small designs for raincoats and things like that. Awful. Absolutely awful.
Maybe you should have kept it too. You'd have owned four
Well,
shops.
if all this goes down the tubes,
You can always
go and get on Madison Ave there with the best of them. I think those days are over.
You are happy here, are you not, John?
Oh, yes.
The baths have rid you of your odour, have they not?
First chance I've had to pay regular. Least.
3 meals a day delivered to your room?
Yes, sir.
Oh, this is your promised land, is it not? A roof, food, care, protection.
Oh, right, Mr. Treeps.
I'll bet you don't know what to call this.
No, sir, I don't.
You call it home.
Never had a home before.
Well, you have one now. Say it, John. Home.
Oh,
No, I mean really say it. I have a home. This is not... Come on.
I have a home. This is my home. This is my home. I have a home. I have for as long as I like.
That is what home is.
That is what is home.
Well, here we are, in fact, in the wonderful warm suite of the Carlisle Hotel. They're all warm, but this is one of the warmest. And thank you for sparing a bit of your time. Last night I saw you on Broadway, the first time I've seen you legitimately acting, or acting legitimate, as they call it here. Why have you done it? Obvious question. But
Perfunctory answer, because somebody asked me if I would.
and was it the play that attracted you, or the idea of...
Not really. I saw the play. I missed it when it was in London at the Hampstead. But then Philip Anglin brought it over to New York and started it there. And I missed it off Broadway as well. I'd always wanted to go and see it when I'd heard about it, because there was a book by Frank Edwards called Strange People, which came out when I was a teenager, which had all kinds of things like the poor blowtorch, who was a young black guy who walked into a Chicago hospital and said that he couldn't lie down on the sheets because they used to burst into flame, and he lay down on the bed and promptly set the pillow on fire, and they held him for 24 hours, but then he sort of ran away in terror and nobody ever knew what happened to him. It was full of those kinds of stories, and one of them was John Merrick, the Elephant Man, and that appealed to me ever since then. It's because of I have a sort of eclectic thing about freaks and isolationists and alienated people. I kind of gather information on people like that, mentally anyway. Then it became a play, and that sort of rekindled my interest in it. I went to see it on Broadway when it had already got sort of smartened up and become a Broadway piece. and I was totally knocked out by it. I thought it's sort of a classic piece of Victorian melodramatic writing with a slight socialist subtext, but it appealed to me strongly. I thought the structure was very good, but thought no more. And then Jack Hofsis, the director, came to see me a couple of months later whilst I was back in New York yet again doing the Scary Monsters album, and asked me if I would consider taking over the role at the end of the year. And I was flabbergasted because I had never been asked to do anything that sort of supposedly legit. And I said I would adore to.
And you began out of town in
Yeah, but we
Denver.
began to, they sort of played safe and put me somewhere so I could die a quiet death.
Right.
Denver, and we did a week there, and then we did 3 weeks in Chicago, and then they felt that I was right for the big time.
Right. Well, in fact, you didn't die a death. It
Big
was
time. Brian Ferry impersonation, you get everything on this show.
In actual fact, all went very well. The critics
Hello,
gave
Brian.
you a very kind reception.
Yeah.
Do after all the years of having had a pretty good run in the rock world, which is obviously still continuing, do you in fact find getting praise from
Well, it
different
was a
sources?
limp rather than a run. It was, awkward at best, but...
But you must be almost blasé about praise from rock papers, or at least the intelligent ones. Are you in fact much more thrilled by the audience response at Broadway? Is it a totally new excitement for you?
Praise from rock papers has never been a gift given unto me. But,
or indeed to anybody.
No, indeed. It's no, some have been.
Well, say the
actually very
audience.
fair.
I mean, there was
yeah,
there was a
yeah,
great
quite
ovation.
so. I've had a terrific audience that have been staunchly loyal in the main part to what I've done and the changes that I've taken, which have been quite, as you know, diverse to say the least. And there have been a sort of a knotty band that have sort of stayed with me through all of that. And so I don't think, I've tried never to feel self-satisfied with what I've been doing, which has prompted me to keep on moving in different directions. But it certainly was an incredible fulfillment for me to be able to do something so-called legitimate. In fact, undergo that kind of discipline and find that I could withstand it and work within somebody else's very strict confines.
Are you getting people saying, I enjoyed your performance, but I hadn't even heard of you before? I mean, is this possible?
That element has crept into it, yeah. But there have been some regular theatre goers who've come and said, well, they had heard of me,
the name, but didn't know
in
your
some
work.
either perverse fashion or or some kind of really corrupted idea of what I was about.
Right.
And I suppose they've got a different impression of me now. Little do they know.
How long will you do the part for on Broadway?
2 hours. Then I go to bed.
How many 2 hours will you do?
About, I don't think I could personally go past Christmas. I know I'm tied up till Christmas.
So that's quite a run.
So
I'd
it's
say.
a long run.
Yeah.
But I mean, for
Yeah.
somebody who's as sort of grasshoppery by nature as myself, it's a long run.
And would you like to go back to the stage on something else in due course?
Not particularly, no. I've learned an awful lot just in the few weeks that I've been doing this. I hope that I can explore the part even further. Good heavens, if I don't, then I'll be sort of wasting a lot of time. I would like to be more adventurous with the part. I've been sticking very tightly to the way I first wanted to interpret the thing. Whilst all this palaver has gone on about press and opening nights and whatever, now things are relaxing more.
Sure.
I would like to stretch out into it more. And there are certain avenues I would like to follow that I haven't had the courage to do so yet. But now I sort of will probably take advantage.
Hi, David. Can we applaud? Okay. I've always wanted to ask, was that a period there was a lot of people who really tried to put David Bowie in the Ziggy years in with the Alice Cooper thing because of
Isn't that absurd?
well, it was because of
I think it was inevitable. I don't know. It's not absurd. I mean,
well,
we
it's a
both
pretty
were doing
broad category. Well,
but
you
people
know,
tend to
too,
do things like that. don't
Yes, they do have a tendency.
I kind of expected all that to happen, and I just trusted in my own conceptions that eventually we'd split off and have separate identities, Alice and myself.
Worked out okay.
Yeah, I mean, just trusted in my own optimistic ideas of what I could do.
Are you these days that optimist as well? Do you see that much optimism in rock and roll? That was a very optimistic record for rock. I mean,
Yeah.
this guy's
Well,
saving rock, literally.
I'm pretty self-satisfied with my own individuality. I don't think I have to exert myself so much to explain that I not part of rock and roll. I have my own identity. I just use rock and roll, and I had to be very exaggerated in the beginning to defy people to put me into a category, so that would leave me room to work in.
Now Ziggy played guitar, jamming good with Weird and Gilly and the Spiders from Mars.
What is Ziggy?
Ziggy, I wanted to define the archetype Messiah rock star. That's all I wanted to do. And I used the trappings of kabuki theater, mime technique, fringe New York music, like my references were Velvet Underground,
right,
whatever.
Suffragette City, or
it had that
street,
energy value. I wanted
street.
that energy value. Yeah, it was
Even the cover
British
had the street,
view
yeah,
of American street energy. So Ziggy was for me a very simplistic thing. It was what it seemed to be, an alien rock star, and for performance value, I dressed him and acted him out. I left it at that, but other people reread him and contributed more information about Ziggy than I had put into him.
Right, they could write novels about that guy.
Right, I think basically because of the that I'd put 3 viewpoints into the album from 3 different areas. Maybe the character himself would appear, and then there would be 2 other statements by 2 other people, all on one album, which was kind of confusing.
Oh,
but
very
it was, I mean, it was
theatrical,
the way an author would write a book.
Yes.
Rather, I mean, it hadn't been utilized that much in records. And I
Forever.
had
And
trouble
they-
explaining
they
that it was
stayed
just,
spiders,
it was a
didn't they?
theater piece, that the spiders didn't really exist, that they only existed for the duration of that character's life.
Right.
I was stuck with him for a long time. It took a long time to shake him off after I'd finished working with him, because people relate to him more than David Bowie at the time. It was still very hard for anybody to realize that a rock artist can go on stage and be a different
People
person
still-
every time he goes on stage.
They do that
Nobody
to
was
this
doing that.
day, though.
It need not be repetitive, right?
Exactly. You don't have to be the same personality every time you go on stage. And mine was more exaggerated.
There are no characters really involved with the last 2 projects other than David Bowie. I see.
with Low and Heroes.
Yeah.
No, of course not. Because when I got back to Europe, before I could start getting involved with characters or narrative again, I had to define a new form of musical language.
And at this
Right.
point, Germany was really a part of you at this time. I mean, you
No, that happened when I left America. As I was leaving America, I knew I had to get to an environment that was totally different to Los Angeles. So I thought of the most arduous city that I could think of, and it was West Berlin. And so I stuck
you
myself
picked
in
up everything and just sort of took a
I
flat.
left
and
everything.
Left and just went there.
Yeah, I left Bel Air, and I
Uh-huh.
left all my millions of videos, and then moving out of that to an area where I actually had to go down the road and buy food in a shop, actually learn how to buy a plane ticket, which sounds so sort of, naive and trite.
It
But
sounds
most
like you-
people, because they can do those things.
Sounds like you dumped a lot of people along the way then that
Yes,
used to
I
do
did.
that for you.
I did. I reduced this whole incredible entourage that was sort of starting to develop down to 3 or 4 people that I worked very well with.
Is that sort of how you live now, with that sort of hub of people?
Yeah, well, I've my womb of Berlin, when it was a womb because of the wall, I guess it was all psychological to go there. I mean, I needed some kind
Protection
of womb.
of that
There's a
fortress.
tension there, too.
The tension there is terrific, and it forced me to reevaluate
I know that-
my position in any given society. That,
In between Low and Heroes, even, you took Iggy Pop to Berlin to make his record.
I think,
And,
yes, I think it's a very good therapeutic city for an artist to go to.
I wanted to
come
ask-
back to not the punk street level, but a real street level where you have to go and do things for yourself,
it's
where
not
nobody
made
will
up.
take any notice of you. I was totally anonymous in Berlin.
But you
They
do
couldn't
that.
care less
You
about
seem to do that. I mean, after every album, after every tour or project, you take these bizarre trips and you go away
But
to
how,
places.
I mean, who wants to come to a city and have people come up to you and say, what's happening on Mars at the moment?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
you've got to.
Very unlikely that would happen in Kenya.
Yeah,
Tell us
sure.
about Kenya.
Kenya.
Yeah.
What do you want to know about Kenya?
Are you going to
we just
record
got
there
back.
next?
Okay, well, I don't know. I didn't know what to expect from Kenya before I got there. I mean, I went there to show my son how animals really live, that they're not always behind bars, because he's seen the Berlin Zoo and things like that, and that's about it. I mean, he's only 6, and he's only seen them in zoos, and so he got there, and then we started looking at the animals, and then I found it was a real country with real people in. It wasn't just one great big safari, and there were kinds of people that I'd never come across before, people called tribes, who led existences that they've led for 700, 800 years. Unchanged.
And also another quite humbling experience.
Completely. I was totally humiliated. I've never met such proud and tall people.
I want to ask you during that, and I don't want to lose sight of the fact that your time in Kenya, but I wanted to ask you about the Iggy thing. One question: was Iggy a way of letting your pop thing come out while you were making albums like Low and Heroes? I mean, were you kind of, in a sense, kind of staying disguised behind him as the producer and player to do this pop music, you know?
That's a difficult question. I guess that might have been the incentive to actually get ahead and do it, but I've been a big fan of Iggy's for a number of years. I'd never ever seen him perform, ever.
You didn't know about the razor blades and the glass and the peanut butter?
Well, I heard, you know, I knew all that stuff.
Rumors, vicious rumors.
Well, knowing Jim, it was incongruous, but actually going out on tour with him was the first time I'd ever seen him work. And that was quite a surprise.
He's amazing.
Yes, he is.
That must have been amazing for you, though, to sit back there every night behind a piano in front of people. And I mean, you lent your name to the project. There's. But
we knew that we'd have that problem from the beginning, and we knew we'd gradually back off.
How did it feel
Jimmy
being
felt
a session
more
man?
assertive about what he was
How
doing.
did it feel being a session man? As Ray Davies says, not paid to think.
I had my bottle of beer and a packet of cigarettes and a piano, and I could get drunk with the band. And
I remember you wearing those thick glasses and your little Harvard law student, and you were really.
I adored it.
It was a terrific character.
I really adored it.
In both Low and Heroes, you create moods that are thought paintings that don't really require words or can get along with a mock language and not even a real tongue to get the idea across.
Yeah.
Is that what's coming? Is that what's up now?
Well, what happened is that I didn't have the necessary verbal equipment to describe what I was seeing, and that's where I needed assistance.
Mm-hmm.
I needed somebody to bounce ideas off and somebody to give me input, because I was so confused with all these blessed people running around my head that I had to do that. So, and Eno was somebody that I'd known for years and years and never had the chance to work with.
Brian Eno, formerly of Roxy Music, for any of you people who don't know. I'm sorry.
And formerly of the Portsmouth Symphonia.
Portsmouth Symphonia.
And many lectures.
Many lectures, all that. He's a
professor of fine arts.
Right. And you got involved with him. And he had been making electronic music for, you know.
I wouldn't like to just call it electronic music. He'd been making his own very personal music, because he also used organic instruments as well, apart from electronics.
Mm-hmm. Even Heroes, where side one is so accessible that it's the finest, I think in our opinion, what you've done up to date as far as bridging that, accessibility towards that, as you would say, personal music,
Yeah, there was a lot of enthusiasm on Heroes because Brian and I liked so much what we did on Low, and we knew we had it in us to do another one, and now I think even a third one.
Oh, that'd be great.
I can't say. I wish we had more time to just stand here and sit here and talk. Really, I mean, we will sit here and talk for more hours, but we have to really kind of buzz off, and that's really
a Canadian word for station break.
Buzz off.
Yeah.
Kind of glamorous to be a commercial artist. That's what I kind of thought I wanted to do when I was 12. I thought it must be because I was impressed with things like the father in Dennis the Menace, who had those check jackets and the big glasses on, and the crew cut. That was a very hip look then, to anybody in Britain. I don't think it was in America. But at the time I thought, that's Madison Avenue, that's advertising, that's the place to be. I think the difference that most artists have, the ones that I come across, they think, we tend to think our opinions are a lot more important than other people's in some way. That often we feel as though we have the key to something. I don't think that we do at all. I just think we dwell on it more. We tend to look at the world as some usable substance more than a non-artist would. I think for many people, just getting through life is enough. That's a big enough task, let alone having to look at the world and the universe and say, now, if I had my way, you know, the way that I work, I will either be extraordinarily accepted, or otherwise I reach a point where I've got 7 people listening to what I do. I mean, there's never in between, at least. And it's been like that all my life, you know. People have either really accepted what I do, or they absolutely sort of push it away from them. And I guess I've gotten used to that, and that's kind of, I guess that's what I am, you know. Sometimes I'm useful currency, and other times I'm not. Oh, Lord, that's so... I honestly can't say there's been one person, or one set of values, or one artistic movement. I think all my life, I've been so eclectic all my life. I've been admiring of so many different people and so many different things that they've done, that it almost feel that I feel that I owe so many, you know, people for the way that I think and do things. I guess anybody who's had the integrity to kind of always work outside of the system has always appealed to me. Well, I suppose since I stopped doing drugs and drinking, I think probably I really prize getting up early in the morning, which is something that happens. I now find, for years now, I've gotten up regularly at 6 in the morning. It doesn't matter what time I go to bed, I still get up, which is not a great thing, actually, when I'm rehearsing, because you rehearse pretty late. But I still get up at 6. I enjoy the fact of seeing the light come up with me, and then utilizing the daylight and what it brings, and the kind of message that it brings. It's a different message from when you're living in twilight hours, and things get very symbolic representationally. If you live through the twilight hours and the early hours of the morning, there's a shadow to your life all the time. Psychologically, you're in the dark as well as physically in the dark. There's something that I find very uplifting and optimistic and creative about working and being very much in the daylight. If I found myself in some kind of cul-de-sac in the music, I'd break down the problem by actually painting it. I'd try and visualize what the problem was, that the sense of these textures were grating against each other in a way that wasn't admirable. And I'd try and visualize those textures and paint them, and then find out what was wrong. And then when I'd solve that problem, I'd take it back into the studio. I've never really compartmentalized things. Everything for me is just this flux of doing stuff. Some of it's music and some of it's visual. And the two have always been very entwined. It's going to affect me, whether I like it or not. I'm going to be pained by the people that don't like it, and I'm going to be bolstered by people who do like it. What it won't do is change the way that I work, which is probably the most important thing. But whatever I hear, and people will insist on sending me any criticism, I'll get over it fairly quickly. I'm not thick-skinned, but I'm not thin-skinned either. But I've gotten used to the fact that you just can't please all the people all the time. And I've got no great desire to be loved in a major way by faceless, anonymous crowds. It doesn't really, it's not part of something that I want. What happens if you make it overly big? If the face is too big for the block?
Yeah.
I judge something that when I can't see my own hand in what I'm listening to or looking at, then I feel that it's in a state that I couldn't distance myself anymore from it. Let's just see. Oh, that's wonderful. What, one on top of the other?
Yeah.
If I can see or feel my own hand, my own workings within it, then it's still too close to me, and I've got to move it even further away so that it becomes something other than myself. It's almost like these two work well, and these two work well, maybe. And when it touches that moment, then that becomes like an arbitrary cut-off point, because you could go further. And the trouble is overcomplicating an idea, which I do frequently. You know? It's the sin of the artist when you have an idea and then you fuck it up. And Francis Bacon used to do it all the time, so I'm in good company. Where you think you've got to a point where it's really good, and then you do that next thing, and it's the worst possible thing you could have done, and you've just gone overboard, and you think, sod, I've ruined it. There's no going back, you know, because you.
Hey, how do we know what's really there?
Yes, never play to the gallery. I think, but you never learn that until much later on, I think. But never work for other people at what you do. Always remember that the reason that you initially started working was that there was something inside yourself that you felt that if you could manifest it in some way, you would understand more about yourself and how you coexist with the rest of society. And I think it's terribly dangerous for an artist to fulfill other people's expectations. I think they generally produce their worst work when they do that. And if the other thing I would say is that if you feel safe in the area that you're working in, you're not working in the right area. Always go a little further into the water than you feel you're capable of being in. Go a little bit out of your depth. And when you don't feel that your feet are quite touching the bottom, you're just about in the right place to do something exciting. I wish I could be altruistic and say, no, it's just for the moment. But I would like to feel, especially in music, I would love to feel that what I did actually changed the fabric of music. And I think I've been very fortunate that I've actually seen it happen within my lifetime. I mean, I've seen music, modern music, change so dramatically over the last 25 years. And I've got a fairly shrewd idea of how much, say, myself and Brian Eno had to do with changing aspects of it, you know, and I'm sure many people from my generation, because it's such a fast event horizon in popular music. Many of us have been able to see the changes that we've made, from the Stones to name anybody you would want to, really. And so that's pretty satisfying, you know, because we've seen it happen. Well, I had a way of working through musical problems by painting them out at one time, and that seems to have disappeared over the years. But
you've lost that ability?
Yeah. For one reason or another, that seems to have changed now.
All right, let's take a look at some of them, and then we'll come back. These are the kinds of images that have been downloaded. These have been, in fact, downloaded by our group here from your website, www.bowieart.com. Okay, let's take a look at the first thing. What's that? Could this be Iggy Pop, huh?
It certainly could be Iggy Pop. That's Iggy Pop in 1976, as I saw him, when we were living in Berlin. We just moved. We both had fairly severe drug problems. And so to rectify that, we moved to Berlin, the heroin capital of the world, which I guess in retrospect doesn't sound like a terribly sensible
No, it doesn't
thing.
sound very smart to me.
And that's a picture of Jim turning blue in his apartment in Berlin.
Tell me the satisfaction of completing a painting where you're on, that you like a lot.
For me,
the satisfaction of that.
For me, to be quite frank, it's finishing it so I can get on to something else. I mean,
it's just
it's
getting
weird.
through
it's
it?
It's getting through it. It's the process. There's something in it that it just turns me to jelly. My heart and my mind just become. I can't explain it. It's a very strange feeling. It's not particularly pleasant either. I can't really say that I enjoy. I can't really say that I enjoy music or painting in quite that. I mean, it's not like sex or something which you can kind of really enjoy. There's something really. It's important. But there's something volatile, emotive, and something that makes me really quite angry about going through the process of both making music and doing visual arts. And,
But visuals arts
but
are
you know, I guess that's my problem.
No, but let's deal with your problem.
But if you deal with my problem, I might not be able to do these things again, you see. I'm wary of analysis.
Yes, sir, but let me point out to you,
Yeah.
knowing your history and knowing your family
Yes.
and knowing your background, you have always resisted any notion that this creativity that you have comes from any sort of dysfunctional or madness out of family.
I think I've often wondered if actually being an artist in any way, any nature, is a kind of a sign of a certain kind of dysfunction, a social dysfunctionalism anyway. It's an extraordinary thing to want to do, to express yourself in such rarefied terms. I think I think it's a loony kind of thing to want to do. I think the saner and rational approach to life is to survive steadfastly and create a protective home and create a warm, loving environment for one's family and get food for them. That's about it. That's actually all. Anything else is extra. All culture is extra. Culture is, that's, I guess it's a freebie. It's something that we only need to eat. We don't need particular colour plates or particular height chairs or anything. I mean, anything will do, but we insist on making 1,000 different kinds of chairs and 15 different kinds of plates. It's unnecessary, and it's a sign of the irrational part of man, I think. We should just be content with picking nuts. Not mine, I might add.
Do not make me laugh. It was a great conversation. Very funny. Say goodnight. Say goodnight, funny. Say goodnight, funny. Say goodnight, funny. No. Say goodnight, funny. Say goodnight, funny. Say goodnight, funny. Bit of a dark spiral with no end, I thought. A Sunday mail over with his deeply felt grace.
Girl, suffer me, I've got no enemies, I'm walking down. It's nothing to me, it's nothing to see. If I'll never see the English evergreens I'm running to, it's nothing to me, it's nothing to see. I'm dying to push their backs against the grain and fool them all again and again. I'm trying to. We bitch watches tear out magazines, those oligarchs with foaming mouths call now and then. Don't believe for just 1 second I'm forgetting you. I'm trying to, I'm dying to. Dollar days, survival sex, honor stretching tails to necks. I'm falling down. It's nothing to me. It's nothing to see. If I never see the English evergreens I'm running to, it's nothing to me. It's nothing to see. Their backs against the grain and fool them all again and again. I'm trying to. It's all gone wrong, we're arm in arm. The bitter love ends never end. I'm falling down. Don't believe for just 1 second I'm